With regard to the creation of man, Genesis chapter 2, verse 15 says, "The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it." God created Adam. He placed him in the Garden of Eden, and he gave him work to do. Now, this is before sin enters the world. It's even before Eve is created. And the promise here is that work is a gift from God to humanity, both for Adam, then later for Eve, and also for us today. Work was given to us by God, not because of sin, but before sin. It was given as an opportunity for us to connect with God, for whom we are working, to enable us to connect with each other. Adam and Eve worked together. We get to work together. And for us to connect to the earth, which God has entrusted to us as we do work in this place, in this land, on this planet. Well, when sin entered the world, work was corrupted. All of a sudden now, instead of just being this gift from God, we have the possibility and the reality of toil and trouble, laziness, workaholism, selfish ambition, futility, meaninglessness, betrayal, all sorts of things that make work so much more painful, so much more difficult. But just as sin, as powerful as it is, could not destroy the image of God in humanity, it only mars it, so too sin cannot destroy the gift that work is. It creates problems and troubles, but work is a gift that God gives to us, and sin cannot stop that. Now, early on in the book of Ecclesiastes, in chapter 2, we saw that work can't be the center of our lives. That it's not something that we sort of build our lives on. And lots of us, in pursuing grades or accomplishments or degrees or success or money or building things or accomplishing things, we make that the center of our lives. And early on in the book of Ecclesiastes, during the deconstruction phase of the book, God was saying, there's no life there. The more success we experience, the more we feel, is this it? Is this all there is to life? And God is trying to say, as wonderful as work is, it's not something that we can build our lives upon. It's not something that will ultimately bring meaning or fulfillment to life. And so in chapter 2 of Ecclesiastes, God is trying to deconstruct this world's view of work. That for many in our world today, work is the thing. That's the thing that will give meaning. That's the thing that will create legacy. That's what will allow us to continue to live. God says, sadly, that's foolishness. There is no life in work. Jesus is what brings life. He's the one that gives meaning and fulfillment. He's the one that offers life. And so in Ecclesiastes 2, God is trying to move work out of the center of many of our worldviews. But we're not in Ecclesiastes 2 anymore. We're going to be looking at Ecclesiastes 11, and Ecclesiastes 11 is in what I would call the Reconstruction part of Ecclesiastes. The first 9 chapters are God showing that human wisdom and all of its attributes is not what we base our lives on. But once we move past chapter 9, God is saying, but there are valuable things that can come through wisdom. And so once work has moved out of the center and we put Jesus into the middle, now it's time to reconstruct what is work's proper position. It is still a blessing from God. It's a gift from God given to all humans. How do we think about it rightly? How do we use it properly? How do we enable work to be a blessing to us and others? That's what we're going to talk about this morning. So let me invite you to take a Bible and turn to the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 11. If you would like to use one of the church Bibles, they're in the rack in front of you. We would be really honored if you would. In those Bibles, it's page 546. Ecclesiastes chapter 11, page 546. Our passage is the first 6 verses of Ecclesiastes 11. Again, in the church Bibles, page 546. Ecclesiastes 11, verse 1, ship your grain across the sea. After many days, you may receive a return. Invest in 7 ventures, yes, in 8. You do not know what disaster may come upon the land. If clouds are full of water, they pour rain on the earth. Whether a tree falls to the south or to the north, in the place where it falls, there it will lie. Whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks at the clouds will not reap. As you do not know the path of the wind or how the body is formed in a mother's womb, so you cannot understand the work of God, the maker of all things. Sow your seed in the morning, and at evening let your hands not be idle, for you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, or whether both will do equally well. In just a minute, we're going to look at some principles from these verses. Before we do, we need to be clear what we're talking about. When I say work, loosely defined, what I mean is anything that we do where we put in energy and effort to try to produce something, to try to be productive, to try to make things better. So for example, of course, that includes our employment. So if you work for a landscaping company, if you're a teacher, whatever your job may be, that's included when I talk about work. That may be pretty obvious. But I also mean things like chores, errands, gardening, mowing the lawn, washing the dishes, putting in conscious energy and effort, trying to make life better, parenting, grandparenting, the things that we do that are trying to help others and bless others, that's also included in work. School, classes, studying, exams, preparation and training for whatever jobs may be coming, that's included in work. Volunteering at the church, in your neighborhood, in your community, doing stuff with family members to try to help them move, prepare, have a birthday party, those sorts of things, anything that we're doing where we're putting in conscious energy and effort to try to make things better, to try to bless others. So a very broad definition of work, not just a job you get paid for, but anything that we're doing whereby we're putting in energy and effort to try to be productive. I should also say before we dive into our passage that the principles we're going to look at today are true for non-Christians and for Christians. And that's because work is not a gift just given to Christians. Work is a gift from God given to humans. And so these principles are equally applicable to non-Christians and Christians. Having said that, everything goes better when done by faith, and everything goes better when done in accordance with the instructions that God gives. And so we're going to be looking today at these 6 verses, but behind them is the idea that these work best when we recognize that our work is done with God, for God, alongside of God, and we are doing these things by faith. That if you don't have faith, you can still work, but it will not nearly be as productive or as much of a blessing. And so the principles we're going to look at this morning have standing behind them the idea that not only are we working, but God is working with us, God is empowering us, God is directing us. God is even doing some things with our work that we don't even know is happening. And so in all of these, we're thinking about working by faith. So with that said, 6 verses, I have 5 principles to help us think about work correctly so that it might be the blessing that God intends for it to be. Principle number 1, working by faith means trusting God's timing for the results. That's verse number 1. Ship your grain across the sea. After many days, you may receive a return. I have a picture up here on the screen of Gary and Sue McLean. Some of you may know Gary and Sue. I'm not going to embarrass them. They're right here in this section. This is where they always sit. They're off the main aisle. They're usually about 5 rows back. Everyone else is pointing to them. 5 rows from the back off to this side. They're always there. You've probably seen Gary and Sue around. They've been at Calvary a long, long time. What you may not know about Gary is that he was my high school youth pastor here at Calvary Church in the late 1980s. I came to Calvary Church in 1987. I was a sophomore. I was coming from another youth group and didn't know a soul here. I said back then that coming into Calvary Church, that was intimidating. Going down into the youth group by myself, no siblings or anything to go with me, that felt intimidating. And I showed up in a room in the old sort of fellowship hall area just across the hall, and there was Gary and Sue. And Gary had just this big smile on his face, and he was just as friendly as can be, full of the love of Jesus, full of joy. Gary learned my name relatively quickly. He invited me to go on missions trips with the church. I went to Arizona on a missions trip. I went to New York City on a missions trip. Gary planned lots of amazing events that I got to come to and be part of. Lots of great friends that I met in that youth group that I'm still friends with today. The youth group that I came from, that was a more challenging situation for me. And coming here, Gary and Sue were a breath of fresh air. They were a gift from God. And when I see myself, I would like to be a pastor who is friendly to everybody, who welcomes everybody. I got that in part from Gary. Now, I promise you, he's here, so you can ask him. I promise you that Gary had zero idea that about 40 years later, I would be standing up here as the senior pastor of the church. Is that right, Gary? Come on, yes. That's the point of verse 1, is you don't know what's going to bear fruit and when it's going to happen. And working by faith means trusting that God will provide fruit in the right time. We're not working because we think this is going to accomplish something. To work by faith means we do the right stuff and we leave the results up to God. And often it may be years down the road until we see that fruit, but we trust that God is in control of when the fruit comes. When you sow your seed in the ground, you have no idea which ones are going to blossom, which ones are going to bear lots of fruit. You don't know exactly how this is going to go. But you plant by faith and you do your work. You may not know how these violin lessons that you're pouring your time and energy into, how those are going to turn out. You don't know how this person that you currently have been assigned to a project team with them, you have no idea that 5 years from now at your company or 10 years from now at your company, that person might be your boss. Or you might be working on a project with them again and I know them from 10 years ago, I can trust them. We have no idea how things are going to bear fruit. The point number 1 is that we trust God and we simply do the work and we leave the results up to Him. They'll come when they come, in His timing and His planning. Point number 2. Working by faith means trusting that God is at work in many areas and not just a few. There's a statement that I often hear around in Christian circles that I really love. And the statement is, find where God is working and join Him in it. The reason why I love that statement is because it gives you this idea that, hey, you know what? We're not running the show, He is. And our job is to kind of submit to what He is doing and to work alongside of Him instead of trying to rope God into doing the stuff we want to do. But there is one way in which the statement, find where God is working and work alongside of Him or work with Him, can be misinterpreted in an unhelpful way, is it can give the impression that God is only working in a couple of visible areas. When the reality is, verse 2 says, invest in 7 ventures, yes, in 8. The idea is God is at work in lots and lots of things, not just a few things. And some of those things are not yet visible, but God is still at work in them. Our culture tells us that we ought to be singularly focused on things. Maybe you're a young woman who loves playing tennis and you are sure that tennis is your future and you're pouring in hours and hours and hours because you know this is going to be how you get a scholarship. This is going to bring meaning and fulfillment in life. Or maybe you're doing the same with music or drama and you think this is where I'm going to pour my energy and efforts. Maybe you're a young adult who's gone all in on being an entrepreneur. You want to get a company started and you're pouring all of your life into this one thing. Maybe you're a parent and you're pouring all your time and energy and effort into these children. Maybe you volunteer at the church all the time. Whatever we ask you to do, you're always a yes. The problem is God is working in a variety of areas. Don't know if you'll turn out to be a tennis star. We don't know if you'll make Broadway. We don't know if these kids that you are parenting, what's life going to be like after they move out? We have no idea that while you're spending all of your time volunteering at church, there are also opportunities in your community, in your neighborhood, other things you can be doing. Verse 2 is saying, look, God is at work in lots of areas. We're not saying give up the tennis. We're not saying give up the music. We're not saying give up the parenting. We're not saying give up the volunteering, but we are saying recognize it's not just one area where God is at work, but lots of them. Invest in 7 ventures, even 8. You don't know which ones will bear fruit and when. The world tells us pick one thing and go all in on it. God says, but I'm at work in lots of areas. You can do lots of things. You can be committed and involved in many different things. And God can be at work in all of those. Principle 3, which comes from verses 3 and 4, so it's going to throw us off a little because now the principles don't go exactly with the verse numbers. Principle 3, working by faith means trusting God works through obedience rather than perfect timing. Verse 3, if clouds are full of water, they pour rain on the earth. Whether a tree falls to the south or to the north, in the place where it falls, there it will lie. Whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks at the clouds will not reap. How many times have you seen a weather forecast that has been wrong? It's going to rain at 100%. 100% areas covered in rain. And then 1 o'clock, the sun is shining brightly. How many times have we canceled church or school for the fear of snow? And then it turned out, oh, the driving wasn't that bad. We probably could have done this. That's what verses 3 and 4 are trying to say is, look, if you try to time the weather, you're never going to get it right. It also has the example, and maybe you can think of the amateur tree cutter who has now a trunk going through the garage of their house or smashing a car. You don't really predict how trees are going to fall. It's a little confusing. This is the Holy Spirit's point through Solomon in verses 3 and 4. If you're trying to time things when it comes to work, you're probably not going to do what you need to do. What God is looking for is just obedience. If you have some sense of God wanting you to do something, just get going doing it. It's really hard to work out the timing of the housing market. You can make all sorts of plans. This is the best time to sell a house. If God's telling you to sell a house, just simply do the work, obey, and leave the timing up to Him. Maybe you're here and you're thinking about what career you're going to go into, and you've heard lots of people say, hey, there's going to be a shortage of nurses in 4 or 5 years, a shortage of teachers in 4 or 5 years, whatever it may be. Look, don't pick your career on the basis of that. Who knows what's going to happen? You might graduate and who knows what will happen to nursing or what will happen with teaching. If you feel that God is leading you to nursing, be a nurse. Don't try to time the market. Don't try to time the stock market. Don't try to time the housing market. It's never too old to learn a new language. The world would tell you, oh, no, your brain is not going to be able to remember things very well. If God's asking you to do this, the principle is working by faith means trusting that God works through obedience rather than perfect timing. If we wait for everything to line up, listen, there is never the perfect time to have a child. You're never going to be financially ready for it. And you will never be emotionally prepared for it. If God is leading you in that direction, he works through obedience rather than trying to line up all the circumstances. Principle number 4, and now we're on verse 5. Working by faith means trusting that God is also working on us. Verse 5, as you do not know the path of the wind or how the body is formed in a mother's womb, so you cannot understand the work of God, the maker of all things. Several years ago, a woman came to see me with her husband. She was retirement age. She had been planning for years how she wanted to use her retirement time. And she had some really great plans. They were not sort of all leisure-based. She had plans to invest in her grandkids, plans that she wanted to do some volunteering both at the church and I think in a neighborhood community that she was in. She had plans for how she wanted to switch from her full-time career to a part-time job. All sorts of really great things. She wanted to make the most of her retirement years. She was not coming to see me to tell me that. She was coming to ask the question, why did God let me get sick? Right as I was ready to get started on these plans. And she felt this level of just difficulty, like I can barely get out of bed in the morning. I feel like I'm not doing anything. I went from doing all this productive stuff to now I'm just simply doing nothing. And I was going to do so many good things. Why would God allow this? Maybe you're here this morning and that's your situation. And to this point, the sermon's been a little frustrating. You're like, I would like to work. I want to work. My health is not letting me do that. Or maybe you're like, I'm knocking on doors, but no one will give me a job. I want to do these things, but God's not allowing any of it to happen. Why? Maybe you're in the middle of a crisis. Maybe you're going through a mental health situation and you're like, I'm not able to do anything. And maybe this sermon is frustrating at this point. Well, that's where verse 5 comes in. Because ultimately, the most important thing is not the work we do for God. It's the work God is doing on us. And if all God wanted from us was robotic productivity, he would give us great health, lots of resources, and lots of tasks to do. But if what he wants from us is character, Christ-likeness, then there are going to be seasons where it feels like he puts us on the shelf, where we go through a wilderness, where our health is simply not allowing us to do things, where the kind of spiritual warfare that we're going through seems to prevent us from doing meaningful kinds of things, where we find ourselves wanting employment and unable to have employment. During these seasons, it's when God is at work on us because he's preparing us for what's coming next. Again, if the goal was simply productivity, God would be like, keep going. But the goal is Christ-likeness, and so there are times in which he pulls us out of the mainstream and sets us aside for a while, sometimes years, sometimes even decades, where it feels like, what am I doing, Lord? And he's like, it's what I'm doing in you. And I'm preparing you for what is coming next. You might be like, all right, amen to that, but what about when you're at the end of life? Well, God is preparing you for the work you're going to do next. See, heaven is not just sitting around. Work is not sort of created by God because of sin, like we got to find some things for these people to do. Work is a blessing from God, and it's going to continue into eternity. And when you're at the end of life, the Lord is like, look, I got a little more time to pour into you before you move into the next assignment. So there are seasons in which the Lord says, I got to put you through this difficult thing. I got to get you to pull back. I got to put a stop sign up so you don't do anymore. Because you matter so much to God, he's not interested in your productivity. He's interested in who you are. And if you'll lean into the season when he is uniquely working on you, maybe you can't get out of bed because he's trying to develop a kind of spiritual endurance that you wouldn't have otherwise. Maybe you're unable to find a job because the Lord is wanting you to realize you have so much more value than just simply what you do or produce. Maybe you're struggling in the midst of this crisis and the Lord is saying, look, I'm trying to develop perseverance in you, and I can't do that if the sun is always shining. If you're in that season, just know the Lord sees you, and there is work happening. It's work he's doing on you to prepare you for future work that is coming that you could not be prepared for otherwise. Fifth and final point from verse 6, working by faith means trusting that work from God is better than idle entertainment. If I ask all of us to pull out our phones and check our screen time usage, I'm guessing a couple of things would happen. One, most of us would be surprised at how big the number was. And two, we'd probably be embarrassed. Have you ever binge watched a Netflix show and got to the end of whatever 22 episodes and thought, wow, that was a lot of time I just wasted doing that? And you enjoyed it, but you don't feel the satisfaction. Have you spent hours and hours and hours on social media and been like, where did the time go? Have you ever been on vacation or the long summer vacation for a student and think, I kind of can't wait until I can get back to work, or I can get back to doing something that's productive? All of that is a sign that work is a bigger blessing from God than leisure. Now, leisure is a blessing from God. But the purpose of leisure is to recharge us for work, not the other way around. We don't work so that finally we can get some time off. Remember, God says we work 6 days and rest on the seventh. We don't rest for 6 days and then work on the seventh. And leisure and entertainment are blessings from God. Thank you. But they're for the purpose of energizing us to work. This is where there is productivity. This is where there is fulfillment. This is where satisfaction. This is where the Spirit is present in powerful ways. And so work that we are doing for the Lord, and again, not just your job, but the volunteering, the chores, the things that we're doing, this is where God is especially present. And the problem is the world around us is trying desperately to get us not to see this. Jonathan Haidt, in a recent book, labeled smartphones as tools of mass distraction. That we're simply carrying around with us this thing that is desperately trying to distract us all the time. AI, one of the negative sides of AI is it's a pull away from us doing work. Let the computer do it. Social media, it's a trap to spend way more time on idle entertainment instead of doing things that are going to be life-giving to us. So please, entertainment, relaxation, a blessing from God. Thank you. But work from God is better. And we want the entertainment, the relaxation, to empower us and equip us to do work, not the other way around.